What's going on, ChavezzSlovakia? It's your boy Chavez here, taking a break from a Clash Royale obsessive playing to bring you the Reluctant Dimension Hopper. This is the time in the video to go grab a snack because we're in for a doozy. It's about an hour long. This is the complete series of it. The Volgun actually put it all into one video. So we'll give a little break here. What is going on? We found some TikTok videos that don't suck, so we watched those. Desolate, horror survival game I played with Screw exactly one time. That'll be going up on the Patreon in about 2 days. Me and Skitten have been shooting vids, so there's some stuff up there. Unusual meme compilations are dropping like at least every other day now, as long as they get reviewed and stuff on a timely fashion. Those are coming up. And so let's get into it. This is a safe SCP. People were telling me that the storyline in this one is really fun, and the event logs are a doozy. Cool, just making sure my webcam is actually turned off. I'll show you the picture-in-picture view for a minute. All right, let's get into it, dude. The Reluctant Dimension Hopper. Here we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Miller, and the SCP we're going to be looking at today is SCP-507. Object Class: Safe. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-507 is allowed free roam of the facility, obviously barring anything that would breach security or safety protocols. Anytime SCP-507 leaves its private quarters, it must be accompanied by an agent, mostly at this point, to make sure that it does not shift without the facility's knowledge.
Excuse me.
SCP-507 should not be physically touched if there have been more than 2 weeks since its last shift. The risks inherent in disobeying this protocol make the action its own punishment, should the issue of disciplinary measures ever come up.
Actually, we're going to readjust here. Just to be a little bit more comfortable, and then I'll just edit my body one time and try not to move for an hour. Good luck to me. Play.
When SCP-507 undergoes a shift, faculty will be informed to keep an eye out for its eventual reappearance. It also has a tracking device implanted into it, and a daily signal check should verify whether or not SCP-507 has returned from its trip.
I like how it's calling it an it. It's not like a person, it's an it.
If it reappears in or nearby the facility, SCP-507 will return to its quarters on its own. Otherwise, a retrieval team of 3 plainclothes agents may be sent to provide transportation back. Upon successful return, SCP-507 can be the subject of various physical tests up until 2 weeks after each shift. It is worth noting that SCP-507 is allowed a computer with an internet connection, by a proxy which strictly limits what information can be uploaded, and to where, in its room, and may petition to use or mate with or act as a test subject for safe or Euclid SCPs that do not affect mental functions negatively or carry an infectious trait. This is a result of SCP-507's persistently clean record, and the implication that if SCP-507 was ever going to be a security leak, it would have used its faux teleportation powers to do so already.
Right, yeah.
It is also worth considering that SCP-507 is actually below average in most physical traits, and that, even in the worst case scenarios, any SCP agent should be more than capable of carrying out a termination order.
Yeah, this is just a regular dude, okay? So don't be tripping. He's alright. Alright.
Description: SCP-507 is a Caucasian male with blonde hair and green eyes, sporting no other outstanding characteristics besides being somewhat overweight and speaking in a vague accent of disputable origin.
Okay.
Although SCP-507 has an already established name due to its unremarkable upbringing, it seems to find entertainment in forcing those it meets to give it a nickname in lieu of divulging this information. Thus, SCP-507 will now respond to the names Tommy, Steve, Bruto, Guy, Houdini, and Grabknock the Destroyer.
Grabknock the Destroyer is a good one.
SCP-507 was originally recovered from the asylum when standard surveillance equipment following repeated successful escape attempts brought its abilities to light. All records of this incident were confiscated, and SCP-507 was taken into custody under the pretense of moving it to a more secure facility.
literally the most boring, like he was just there and we just found him. That's it.
The original theory was that SCP-507 possessed some form of teleportation ability, as it would suddenly disappear and eventually reappear in a different location. Subsequent interviews with the subject did verify that its ability could be used in such a manner, but that it was merely a side effect for its main affliction. SCP-507 holds that during its periods of disappearance, it is actually displaced into a random alternate reality.
That's awful.
The landscape generally stays the same, but the inhabitants and climate of the parallel world often do not. SCP-507 also insists that it has no control over the time and duration of these shifts.
Oh my lord.
This has been more or less confirmed by the subject being known to displace at inconvenient times, such as mid-sentence, while sleeping, or even while using on-site public facilities.
That's unfortunate.
If SCP-507 moves about in the alternate world, the eventual shift back will then place it at the corresponding area in our reality. A sample list of SCP-507's descriptions of alternate realities can be found in Document 507-0.
So they're like, literally, we have confirmed it, bro. He has no ability to control this. He just be leaving. Mid-sentence, he just disappear, bro.
Mentally, SCP-507 shows no large deviations from the psychological profile for a normal person. It has confessed to have always had a great interest in the paranormal and mythological, which has directly led to its eventual permission to interact with relatively harmless SCPs. SCP-507 especially enjoys meeting with other sentient SCPs.
That was weird. Where are we at?
Once going so far as to request a small vacation to visit SCP-82. The request was eventually granted after persistent pleading from SCP-507, and the meeting was thankfully uneventful. Document 507-0. A sample list of SCP-507's supposed extradimensional travels, along with any demands made by it after returning. Subject arrived in complete darkness, leading it to assume that the current location was indoors or subterranean. After fumbling about for a possible way out, subject heard a sound akin to muted breathing nearby. Subject then decided to curl up in the nearest corner and wait it out, instead of risking a blind confrontation with an unknown creature. Request: a standard flashlight, which it now always carries on its person.
Just in case.
Subject appeared in a replica of the facility, although apparently fallen into disuse. Further exploration led to the discovery of various corpses strewn about the area.
Oh, that's awful.
All heavily decayed and covered in an odd type of mold.
Oh, the mold that me and Skidden heard about with the other one. Something of God, maybe? The music of God, maybe? Is that what it is? Whichever one turns people into plants.
Upon noting that the corpses seem to rhythmically expand and contract as if still breathing,
that same thing
subject
happened in
attempted to leave the facility. This idea was quickly discarded when it opened an exit and found that the outside world was apparently coated with the same odd growth.
That's definitely our future.
Request: heavy doses of voriconazole and a fungal expert to help ascertain the nature of the mold. No exact match of the described mold was found, but it was noted to share many attributes with certain types of cordyceps fungi. See Addendum 507-2. Upon reappearing, subject was reported to mutter, "So many spiders." Subject refused to elaborate. Request: a handheld firearm of any type. Request was granted under the stipulation that said firearm is specifically built to only use rubber bullets. Subject once again appeared in a pitch-black location with breathing nearby. Upon turning on its flashlight, subject was surprised by a man wearing a black business suit and sunglasses with an impossibly wide smile. Said smiling man was apparently leading toward SCP-507 when it turned on the light. The end result being that their faces were almost touching.
Oh, God!
Smiling man then remarked, "Back so soon?" before subject switched the light off again, discharged all rounds in its firearm at the general vicinity of the man, and once more curled up into the nearest corner.
Homie popped off on him and then sat down.
Until shifted back into our reality. Request: none. Those with level 2 security clearance may read a full list by accessing document 507-3B. Forward. Below is an archive of all documented shifts undergone by SCP-507. Each of these entries are presented with their contents in the following order. Dimensional label, created upon discovery of a new reality for ease of later reference. Retrieval, used for the documentation of any complications or anomalies in the recovery of SCP-507 post-shift. Description of reality, and description of any after effects caused by visiting said reality. And finally, request, listings of any special requests made by 507 upon return, or for noting any souvenirs retrieved from the shift. 1B7, 55E, 728. Retrieval uneventful. Subject arrived in a desert environment and wandered around for roughly an hour before encountering another human. Said human was wearing a tanned leather overcoat and was described as completely unshaven.
Jesus.
Said man was extremely surprised to find the subject and demanded that he be followed in order to lead it back to food and shelter. Subject originally began to follow the man, but intentionally lost contact with him upon noticing that his leather coat contained no seams or stitching.
Why would that
Request
be?
None.
Okay.
9E2, 66V, 7HG, 5.
Okay, we'll pause here before we get into the heaviness of this. You know, it's SCPs like this that tend to be the most dangerous, with like extraordinary abilities that they are not extraordinary, right? Imagine if he goes into the mold universe, somebody hitches a ride back, right? Somebody more powerful than him, right? Because he has no control over this. It kind of just happens to him. So this is going to lead into a very interesting place very soon, I think.
Retrieval uneventful. Subject arrived in a forest habitat with no signs of previous or current industrialization. No further anomalies were perceptible until the subject grew hungry, at which point it discovered that harvesting or eating plant life would cause them to emit telepathic screams. Subject abstained from eating for the first day because of this, but became hungry enough on the second day onward to consume the flora in spite of the screams.
Jesus.
Testing has shown no biological changes in the subject from this, but subject repeatedly affirms that it felt horrible for doing so.
Right, yeah, that's pretty sad.
Request: none specifically, but subject adopted a gelatin and pudding-based diet for 2.5 weeks after returning from this shift.
Yeah. Oh, God.
J75 R63 3TF. Retrieval uneventful. Subject arrived in a dimension with flipped genders. No notable differences beside this were discovered, although subject found issue with the fact that its female counterpart looks pretty much the same as the standard version.
Sorry, dog.
Request:
Sorry, dog.
dimensional label invalid. Retrieval. Via tracking device, plainclothes agents found subject sitting in an alleyway at... Subject was largely unresponsive upon retrieval and remained so until the standard questioning phase. When asked where it went this shift, subject answered, "Nowhere. I think I missed it this time." Subject experienced minor motor skill impairment and decreased activity levels for roughly a month after this shift.
Jesus.
Request: a nightlight and wristwatch which makes an audible tick as the second hand moves. Both were approved.
Okay, so then being in nothing, yeah, I get that. Just a bunch of nothing for like a long time. That would be weird. Yeah.
J7Q 53Y 8ST. Retrieval. Subject was found in its quarters, sprawled on the floor, attempting to gnaw through the sleeves of a straitjacket it was wearing. The jacket, leg restraints, and loss of motor skills still present from the last shift led to the subject being unable to stand up or open the door to find assistance.
Ah, Jesus.
Subject shifted while sleeping and awoke restrained and lying in a hospital-grade bed. A nurse informed the subject that he was still a patient at the asylum and was currently suffering from advanced stages of dementia. Subject was then sedated and spent the rest of this shift alternating between semi-consciousness and total unconsciousness.
That's awful.
Request. Disregarding, get this thing off me, none. 9E2-66V 7HG5 2. Retrieval. Subject found in its quarters, balled up with its hands over its ears. Subject once again arrived in the forest habitat from 9E2-66V 7HG5. The florists seem to have remembered subject's last visit, though they reacted by screaming for its entire 4-day shift.
Wow.
Request. A hug.
Cute.
Approved. And they say the Foundation is evil.
Right. Which we figured out, they're really not evil. They're just really hardcore, you know? Really determined and focused. They still call SCP-507 an it, which I guess now that like watching it, I don't really find much of an issue with. But it definitely seems a little bit impersonal, given that he is still a guy. But, you know, you got to keep your stuff straight. We'll take a little break here. It's been like 15 minutes. You know, go ahead and stretch your legs a little bit, give your eyes a rest. We're about to dive back in it because I'm pretty committed to this. I personally don't have any snacks though. I might need to remedy that. We're just gonna order food today and tough it out. Let's do it. Play. We're back in
6K3 21B I0S. BN2 AL6 CTE. Retrieval uneventful. Subject arrived in a derelict metropolitan area. Subject was unable to locate any other humans, but noted an overabundance of cats in every area it visited. Said felines seemed no different from normal house cats though, and subject spent most of this shift petting any who came near.
Cute.
During the standard examination procedures after retrieval, trace amounts of a Toxoplasma gondii variant were discovered on the subject's clothing, as well as larger amounts on its shoes.
What is that?
Further testing showed that the subject had not yet been infected with the toxoplasmosis variant, most likely attributed to the short time frame of this shift not allowing the subject to grow hungry and seek out food. All clothing and belongings that were on the subject's person during this shift were incinerated, and the subject forced to undergo special decontamination procedures in order to prevent any possibility of contagion.
Is that like a real
Request. A pair of rubber gloves. Denied, on the basis that hand protection would not have protected subject from infection in any way.
That makes sense. We're gonna look up what this is, if this is like a real toxic. Okay, it literally comes from cats. Oh yeah. Yeah, cats get it from eating like stuff that's like infected from raw meat or whatever, and then you get it from petting cats. That is real. I've heard of that before. Yeah, I have heard of that.
125 28P OS4 3.
You eat something, you'd be messed
Retrieval.
up, dog.
Via tracking device, subject was attempting to return on its own, but was making less progress than usual due to the discomfort of doing so. Subject once again arrived in a pitch-black area with muted breathing nearby.
Jesus.
Subject decided to seek an exit this time via blind wandering. Subject eventually found itself at the mouth.
The battery literally, or the video card literally ran out of space there. Jesus. Alright, we're back. Basically, they were talking about his sunburn that he got that was like really bad. And it's because he had sunglasses on, which is why his eyes didn't get burnt out.
Subject did not notice that it was wearing these until they were pointed out, and supposed that they were probably why its eyes didn't undergo the same process as its skin.
Right, yeah.
7F2 WA3 193. Retrieval uneventful. Subject arrived in an urban area with no major changes as far as it could tell. Subject used the public computers of a library to search for differences between this dimension and ours, eventually finding that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by his vice president in order to claim his position. This ultimately led to the presidency becoming a tribe leader-like position, where the current holder is legally allowed to be challenged and overthrown by other suitable candidates. Subject noted with great surprise that this change did not do much to alter the times that most major presidents took and held in office. Many of the minor and or detrimental presidencies tended to end via bullet wounds, often in unlikely locales or from improbable angles, which deterred most from attempting coups at all. Request: none.
That's dope. I like that.
WS6 ECU 83D.
You know, that would get rid of a lot of our debates. You know, like we have this big old debate about Trump, right, and his presidency, just like we did with Obama, just like we did with Bush, just like we did with every president, really. I mean, it's not new, right? It just feels new because it's now, okay? But like, imagine if Trump is still president and you could openly challenge the president and he's still president, dog. We just be like, everybody would kind of be a lot more content. Like, I wish somebody would challenge him, but they haven't, so apparently he got it. Apparently he really throwing down up there.
Retrieval uneventful. Subject arrived at the mouth of the cave surrounded by almost unbearable heat. Most of the heat appeared to emanate from two suns in the sky. The subject could not decide whether they were extremely large or extremely close to the planet. Upon further examination, the suns blinked and turned away, taking the heat with them. Subject spent the rest of this shift as far back in the cave as possible. Request:
wow.
None.
He didn't even ask for like a blanket
Q56 DRU 865. Retrieval. Subject found in the cafeteria, masticating on what appeared to be... Upon containment, subject uttered the words, more, before losing consciousness. Subject regained consciousness 2 hours later, expressing a strong desire for pudding. When questioned, subject claimed to see the biggest mound of pudding ever. When questioned as to why it was masticating upon arrival, subject claimed to be eating a glob of pudding at the time. Subject reported seeing rolling around the hallways. Hallucinations passed within 24 hours. Request: pudding. Request granted.
So what was rolling around the hallways? Like, what was he eating on? I'm gonna read and find out for this. What do you guys think? I don't have, like, Skitten normally, like, can tell, like, right off the bat exactly what it is that they're hinting at. I got nothing. Body parts, something? I'm confused. I don't know what he was eating. I bet you it's gross, though. And then wait, let's just find out what masticating normally refers to. Right, like blending. Maybe it's like ground beef or something like that. Yeah, I bet you it's body parts. That's what it seems like.
F24 9S6 33C. Retrieval. Subject found in Service Tunnel 6R3BK without original equipment. Subject was wearing a simple uniform with a similar design to the current Foundation D-Class uniform.
That is
Subject shifted while dining in the cafeteria. Destination dimension had an analog to the Foundation with a facility in the same location, although internal layout had significant differences. Security responded to subject as an intruder and detained it immediately. During this process, the subject was imprisoned and stripped of all equipment, including tracking device. For the remainder of the shift, subject underwent repeated questioning. The Foundation analog refused to accept subject's explanation of dimension hopping.
Interesting.
Information gleaned from post-shift debriefing indicates that F24 9S633C has a Foundation analog in the Society for Containment of the Paranormal. This analog has a strong British influence and is opposed by the Covert Occult Group and the Church of the Mending God.
Ooh.
Further details remain unclear, as the Society refused to answer the subject's questions and only slipped details by assuming it knew them already. Request: replacement equipment. Request granted.
Okay. So, I mean, but the other things that we've read about, like that group or whatever, have like almost a godly view of, you know, SCPs and stuff. Like they view them... So it just seems odd that they would like detain him like that and question him so aggressively if they were talking about like that poem me and Skitten heard about how like SCPs are, like you shouldn't look down on the evil ones and you should even question the good ones. Like trying to like, SCPs should be free flowing, they're just visiting, they're from somewhere else. Like
4GT F1Q H17. Retrieval. Subject was found by the cafeteria kitchen staff of site drenched, covered in mud, and suffering from severe hypothermia. Subject arrived in what appeared to be a large field during a rainstorm.
Unfortunate.
Subject attempted to find shelter from the rain but found none, remaining in the rain for the entire shift. After an unknown length of time, the subject reported seeing entities in the distance. Although the heavy rain obscured the subject from obtaining a detailed report of their appearances, the subject described them as being vaguely humanoid in shape. The entities began to slowly move towards the subject from all directions.
Oh no.
Near the end of the shift, the subject reported hearing labored breathing from the nearest entities. Request: a set of warm clothing. Approved.
Clearly.
To a W9U2E5T. Retrieval: uneventful. Subject arrived in midair, falling from an outdoor environment into a subterranean body of water at the bottom of a large cavern. Though admittedly experiencing a strong surge of adrenaline from this event, subject reported swimming a long way before reaching land. Subsequent observation revealed a giant hole in the ceiling of the cavern, through which subject had apparently fallen. Also reported were archways to other large caverns, most with shafts of sunlight visible, indicating other surface collapses. Regular vertical grooves in the walls indicate possible excavation. Despite the cavern's immense size, no other sign of life was observed. Before returning, subject realized that the possibility of shifting back to our reality so far underground might cause it to be displaced in solid rock, and spent its remaining time frantically searching for a way back to the surface. When subject succeeded, it discovered that the sinkholes were much more widespread than what had been visible from below ground. Request: driving lessons. Denied.
Diving lessons, not driving lessons. Yeah, denied. Okay, interesting. That would be denied. You know what's becoming very apparent about SCP-507? That if it's not an it, and it is a man, he is like Survivor Man. He is really coming through the thick of it. Free falling, he's diving, he's finding shelter. Like, he is the ultimate survivor. In the middle of the night, no questions, boom, you're gone. That's crazy, actually. He is actually a real survivor, dog.
2UU-519Q3D. Retrieval. Upon seeing Foundation personnel, subject approached them and requested to be recontained, sharing knowledge of SCPs that were of level 3 clearance. The length of time the subject was absent from our reality was notable, being roughly 3 months in length.
Jesus.
However, during this time, it made several notable discoveries, including several SCPs uncontained by our reality's SCP Foundation, but contained by Universe 2UU-519Q3D's equivalent.
Okay.
These SCPs have now been contained. Through this 3-month time frame, the subject managed to become a member of 2UU-519Q3D's SCP Foundation equivalent, working its way up the ranks far faster than would have been anticipated, assuming it had been made a member of Foundation personnel on the same day.
Wow.
At the time of its return, he was apparently in the field, working to contain 2UU-519Q3D's equivalent of SCP. Curiously, our Foundation had sent out a task force for precisely the same reason on the same day. Further links between Universe 2UU-519Q3D and our reality are being investigated. Request: to be made a member of Site personnel. Denied.
Denied, son. You want to go back, bro. I was a part of the team then.
3JT, 3MD, DIG. Retrieval. Subject retrieved via implanted tracker. Medevac required to site.
Oh, geez.
Subject was immobile upon retrieval due to greatly increased body mass, measured kilograms. Lead research approved emergency use of SCP-394 to keep it alive in order to obtain a report.
SCP-394. It's a container of ear candles. When used, the candle burns. The user falls into a deep sleep, and then the user begins to lose body fat. Interesting.
Upon recovery, subject reported being surrounded by really big creatures resembling. They quickly trapped him in a transparent container. It was then transported an unknown distance to a shiny surface, whereupon the creatures began to observe him. After approximately 1 day, tubes were inserted into unknown fluid, which was not found upon examination. Subject reported that the tubes were removed shortly before the shift and had observed approaching it, presumably for the purpose of extraction. Request: services of a personal trainer. Dr. has agreed to let the subject borrow her workout tapes. Subject now displays a strong aversion to pudding.
Okay, they fed
9J3.
him. That was what they did? These smart-ass alien shits just fed you till you got fat, dog. That's weird.
Y6X GTY.
That's weird.
Retrieval: the subject was found hanging from its ankles in a tree on site.
Damn.
Subject was partially encased in insulated, reflective titanium armor upon retrieval.
That's cool.
The subject described the world it had arrived in as extra shiny and stated that it was apprehended by law enforcement officers upon retrieval.
Okay.
After being apprehended, the subject was transported to a nearby manufacturing facility and placed upside down on an assembly line where a series of metal sheets were shaped and cut to fit its body.
What?
It briefly had time to ask what was going on and was informed that the radiation from the sun was extremely dangerous and titanium reflective suits were required by law to prevent thermal radiation damage to any person or structure.
That's cool.
Request: sunscreen and eye exam. Granted. 52J0793GH. Retrieval: via tracking device, subject was found inside a padlocked metal shed behind an abandoned house on the outskirts of. Subject arrived in a small room housing several dried corpses.
Oh,
Besides said corpses, the room was mostly bare. The only things subject noted were a single paneless window and a light fixture on the ceiling which occasionally flickered. Subject attempted to rise to his feet, but had difficulty doing so due to repeated and unpredictable surges of motion. Subject eventually made its way to the window, at which point it discovered that its room was actually a container suspended in mid-air by a large chain.
Jesus
Subject
Christ.
watched as similar containers passed by him, and as it passed by others, via a complex web of rails above it which the chains were attached to.
Oh my god.
Subject could see nothing besides this but darkness in all directions. Subject then tried to wait out its time in this dimension by falling asleep, but found it difficult due to a newly discovered quality of the corpses. During moments of darkness caused by flickering, the corpses rearranged themselves into poses which would be logical for living people during that particular moment. If the subject was looking out the window, the corpses would be crowded around him in an attempt to get a better view.
Oh, that's
If the subject
awful.
was sitting, they would also be seated in a pattern to form a circle. If the subject attempted to reach the light fixture, they would act as a support or seem to be in the process of pushing him upwards, etc. Request: none. The area which the subject exited, though, has been cordoned off and is currently under surveillance. If no evidence of foundation-worthy phenomena has been experienced by, an anonymous tip will be sent to local law enforcement agencies so that they can discover the crime scene and take appropriate investigative actions on their own.
That's really weird. So the area that he's in, like the locked shed, has got bodies in it? Yeah, the abandoned house. Those people are definitely dead. Yeah. It's definitely an alternate, like, hellverse where there's people, where these people's bodies are found at. 100%.
Subject noted that the only type of machine available was something similar to slots, but they apparently required no money. 5N2Q actions on their own.
Yeah. That's awful.
YTF 5N2Q00. Retrieval uneventful. Subject arrived in a crowded casino-like area. Subject noted that the only type of machine available was something similar to slots, but they apparently required no money to play and gave out nothing upon a win. Upon actually sitting down in front of one and trying it, the subject discovered that the machine dispensed a small slip of paper with writing on it upon every pull of the lever and spin of the symbols it displayed.
Okay.
Subject could discern no real pattern to what symbol would produce what type of note, but wrote down a list of its attempts and what it received from each just in case. Jewel crescent claw. If given a slice of death, could you tell how large it was? Hammer crescent crescent. A poor base leads to rushed patch jobs. Crescent hammer jewel. Deja vu.
I like that. I just want to know what the triple ones do, the ones that pay you out. That's the ones I want to know.
Claw circle hammer. There are things worse than death. For one, not dying.
Fags.
Crescent hammer crescent. There will always be someone to look after you.
Weird.
Crescent jewel crescent. They're not that jolly, it's just stuck that way. Hammer, crescent, hammer. There will always be something to look after. Claw, claw, claw. The future's looking bright. Request, none. FN305P KHC. Retrieval, uneventful. Subject appeared in a white corridor, with steel doors lining both walls. Each door had a keypad, a small speaker system, and a clipboard containing forms written in undecipherable characters.
Okay, hold on. White corridor, steel doors lining both sides with keypads. Got it.
As the subject approached one door to examine said clipboard, the door's attached speaker turned on and began to address it. Subject was informed that the voice belonged to the person locked behind that specific door, and that he was wrongfully imprisoned, then left to die. The prisoner then pleaded with the subject to release him from his cell. Subject jokingly replied that he would free the prisoner if he promised not to stab the subject upon release. There was roughly a 7-second pause before the prisoner asked what stabbing was. After a moment of deliberation, the subject defined stabbing as the creation of a new orifice through the use of a pointed object. Another pause followed. The prisoner eventually affirmed that he could not stab the subject because all of his objects were very blunt. Subject naturally did not open that door or any of the others. Request, none.
Bro, I can't stab you because all I have is blunt instruments. Will you still open this door though? Hell no, son. Hey, we're gonna figure this one out, but I'm gonna do it from a very safe distance.
I-52-37G-78M. Retrieval. Via tracking device, subject was in a holding cell of the police station, under charges of public indecency. Extraction was successfully made with no complications. Subject arrived in an area apparently undergoing a large snowstorm. Subject attempted to find shelter, but could not find its way in the storm, and had almost completely succumbed to exposure by the time it was located and pulled into a cave by a man covered in protective furs.
Lucky, bro.
The man helped the subject out of its soaked clothing, although he did not have an extra set of garments. He led the subject to an underground hot spring his cave was connected to.
Dope.
When the man was sure that the subject was regaining its strength, he removed his furs and entered the spring as well. Subject was extremely surprised to discover that the man was a second SCP-507. Subject noticed no obvious physical differences between itself and the double, although the alternate 507 had a pattern of tribal scarring across his torso, as well as the bases of some of his limbs. Subject and the double remained in the cave and conversed with each other until the subject's shift ended. Request. Subject drew a replica of the alternate 507 scars from memory and asked for any information on possible cultural or symbolic meaning behind the patterns. None were found, but Foundation researchers noted that the lines were congruent with incision marks which would have been made during a standard. A human heart with the words "I need you" written in the same liquid was discovered in the subject's hand. Subject claimed that said object was not in its possession during the shift and does not know how it came into its possession. Researchers are attempting to identify the liquid.
Oh my god.
Subject arrived in pitch black darkness, with the sound of crying nearby. Upon activating its flashlight, subject discovered the smiling man from previous shifts leaning towards him. Brown liquid leaked from around its sunglasses. Smiling man pushed its face closer to the subject's and uttered the phrase, "Why did you do this?" Smiling man then wiped off a portion of the brown liquid from its eyes with its hand and began caressing subject's cheek with it.
Wow, that's
Subject
weird.
forcefully pushed Smiling man away. Subject observed that the Smiling man's business suit contained several holes, with brown liquid trailing down from them.
Okay.
Subject drew its firearm and pulled the trigger. However, for unknown reasons, the pistol did not fire. Smiling man began slowly walking towards the subject. Subject ran for approximately 10 minutes and spent the rest of the shift huddled in the corner. Request: a more reliable pistol. Denied, as the cause of error is unknown.
Wow. So the smiling man was bleeding from where you shot him before. Like straight up bleeding. Like you but it didn't do nothing, bruh. And the liquid, is it something that the mole, it's gotta be blood. It's gotta be his version of blood. Where'd the heart come from though? He must be messing with you, dude. The smiley man must be messing with you.
9E2 66V 7HG5 3. Retrieval via tracking device. Subject was discovered 7 kilometers northeast of the facility. Subject shifted while reading in its quarters. Subject found itself returned to the forest habitat containing telepathic trees. The trees remained silent upon its entry to the environment. The subject admitted that despite its previous experiences within the environment, it was curious about the absence of any human habitation. The subject propelled itself to the highest ground it could find in order to see over the tree canopy. The subject found a clearing on top of a hill. Subject reported seeing a huge semi-translucent blue dome covering the entire forest. The tree canopy extended out to the edge of the dome with foliage so thick that looking up and through it was unfeasible. Subject reported itself to see the dome slightly off-center, suggesting it was not underneath the direct middle. Request: none.
Okay, this is a good stopping point. I'm gonna take a little break. Okay, take some time to eat some snacks, stretch the legs again. We're about halfway through, and we'll get back and finish this up. It's about 34 minutes of the hour. So right now I'm loving it. The guy is literally Bear Grylls, right? There's a guy named Bear Grylls, the survival expert. Him and apparently his body doubles all can do all the surviving. And I'm loving the way the inner dimensions are definitely layering on top of each other a little bit. Where, like, you know, he visits the same places over and over again. And so it definitely paints like a big picture of like what's out there in terms of like other dimensions and all that kind of stuff. So that's definitely fun. I'm gonna take a little break and then we'll get back into it.
(5Z4 75T 7YB). Retrieval. Subject was found prone and unresponsive in its quarters. Subject was bleeding significantly. Several deep gashes were found in the left side of the subject, just under the armpit. The claw marks extended to the bottom of the rib cage. Subject received traditional first aid and was committed to the on-site infirmary. The subject woke up on a snow-covered plain. Subject did not have its backpack on hand at the time of the shift, having been asleep. All that went with it was its bed sheets and pajamas. Subject reports having seen a TV show of how to survive in a cold environment before the shift. It attempted to build a large crude snow cave using its hands when it was interrupted by a large white bear. This is the extent of its recollection. Request: a proper weapon. Granted. Losing subject to a non-anomalous polar bear would be a waste of Foundation resources and an embarrassment. Subject shall receive a knife, sheath, and belt, and is required to keep these items on its person at all times. Okay, so finally he's got a real actual killing device, but he had to get mauled by a bear to get it. And this is the ridiculous part. They expect this man to fight a bear with a knife. That is their expectation. Yeah, you got attacked by a bear, so here's a knife. Go for it, bro. I'm telling you, they know something about this dude. They know something about this dude. 3G8 14H 9UX. Retrieval. Recontained in the kitchen, missing left hand and using expletives in an uncontrolled fashion. The subject was returned to the infirmary. The subject transitioned into a dimension very similar to our own at first glance. The subject was apprehended by Foundation personnel in the infirmary and questioned about his small canines. The subject admitted to not knowing what that meant, but quickly worked it out after his interviewer opened his mouth and pointed to a large set of fangs located on either side of its incisors. The interview also commented on the subject's roundish body shape, which was considered unusual and fascinating in this dimension. Despite these differences, the subject described the creatures who interviewed it as kind. They proceeded to bring the subject a large amount of food. The subject noted a distinct lack of anything green in the meal offered to him. When later told to elaborate by Foundation personnel, he stated it was all meat.
No vegetables, bro.
After eating the meal, 2 of the creatures containing the subject in their equivalent of the infirmary escorted him into a small room nearby containing a locket hanging on the opposite wall. They told the subject to remove its clothes and stand in front of the locket. After the subject had done as ordered, they opened the locket and exposed it to a green orb for approximately 8 minutes. The subject noted the lack of any scar tissue on his left side and a strong feeling of general well-being. The next day, a creature came to him and asked for a small portion of his skin and musculature in order to study genetic differences. To this, the subject responded with, "Only if you provide me with another delicious meal." The creature was visibly excited by this outcome. A small biopsy was conducted on the subject's upper right thigh. The subject described this experience as painful but totally worth it. A huge amount of unspecified meat was delivered to the subject upon completion of the biopsy. The subject was then released to explore the facility. For the next month and a half, the creatures continued to supply the subject with mounds of meat and engage it in amiable conversation. The subject acquired 14 kilograms of fat during this time. On April 16, 2015, the subject was escorted to the kitchen equivalent. It was then put on a chopping block and its left hand was removed. Request: a replacement hand.
So there you go. That's where all the food comes from, which is disgusting. Good God, you knew it, dude. You knew when they talk about you eating all this meat. The things this man has eaten. But, oh, whatever, man.
Granted.
Jesus Lord.
8A891T710. Retrieval: uneventful. Subject arrived in a large opaque dome filled with plants without sign of human habitation. Subject stated that walking was difficult and uncomfortable. Upon further investigation, the subject found a window displaying what was described as pitch black with Earth on the horizon. Several minutes later, a tall humanoid encountered the subject, inquiring about his comparative short stature. Subject replied, asking where he was. The humanoid stated that they were in Base 12, Oxygen and Vegetable Wing. Subject asked what Earth was doing in the sky. Humanoid appeared puzzled and responded, "That's the moon," gesturing to Earth. A short argument ensued, and the humanoid departed. Subject noted that after the Earth set, a rocky gray landscape became visible, becoming identifiable as the lunar surface after an hour or so. Subject attempted to explore more of his surroundings, but shifted back to our reality after setting out. Request: 1 camera. Subject stated the view was breathtaking. Denied.
Yeah, that's not really necessary.
7J0-175-35X. Retrieval: subject was recontained on the roof of the facility after having fallen approximately 5 meters. Subject shifted while attempting to fall asleep. Subject arrived in a large body of water, believed to be fresh water by the description of its taste. Subject swam upward an estimated 35 meters before reaching the surface of the water and beginning to tread. Subject noted several dark shapes moving in the water beneath it and bright lights in the distance, but it did not attempt to approach either. Subject reportedly found breathing extremely difficult. Subsequent physical tests indicated that the subject had ingested substantial amounts of methane during the shift. Request: a tank of breathing gas as part of its equipment. Approved.
Oh, okay. That's surprising.
99P
That stuff's explosive, I think, isn't it?
E124J. Retrieval: subject was found in the location which it had left, curled up and crying violently. Subject screamed, "Why did I have to go?" when an attempt was made to interact with it, and suffered from severe depression for several days thereafter.
Bro?
Agents described a beautiful smell coming from it. Subject landed in a place it could only describe as impossibly beautiful. Subject stated that it was like the best part of every place all put together, and that the beauty was so overwhelming that the subject had no desire to move. When it began to become thirsty and hungry, plants apparently extended vines and shot liquid into its mouth, which it described as the best anything I have ever drunk ever. Sweet and rich and everything all at once. After roughly 1 day, subject having never looked at his watch during this time had no clear knowledge of the duration. A humanoid female, subject's age, unexpectedly encountered subject as she walked over a hill. Subject claimed that they had a long conversation despite not speaking the
Wow,
same
that's
language,
weird.
and was unable to explain how this was possible or the form of their communication had taken. Subject claimed that he understood her answers to his questions and about her and their location, but was unable to articulate them. Subject described her with, "I know I'm sounding repetitive here, but she was the most amazing person I have ever met." With some reluctance, Subject stated that they had been about to kiss when the shift ended. Subject then had to be prevented from committing suicide. Tests after successful psychiatric treatment indicated Subject was considerably more physically fit and had gained roughly 8 IQ points, despite having done no significant exercise during the shift. Request: various foods, beverages, and pictures of women widely regarded as very physically attractive. The subject considered all granted requests unsatisfactory, making statements such as, "It's not the same," and no, not like that. Subject then requested a way to stay in a universe permanently after having arrived there, and was reminded that it was impossible.
Jesus, man. It's like the coffee machine. Remember when the guy requested a liquid of like the best thing ever and then killed himself afterwards? It's like it's probably from that universe. Or dimension.
6A5.
Dimension. Not universe, dimension.
93W132. Retrieval. Subject returned malnourished and suffering from the effects of an unknown toxic substance, from which it soon recovered. Later analysis showed the substance to be a venom containing a high level of silicon. A small silicon-based crystalline creature was hanging from the subject's finger when the subject returned. This specimen subsequently died of unknown causes, possibly starvation. Subject shifted to a dimension which primarily contained crystals of varying sizes and hues. The sun was described by the subject as smaller and bluer than ours. The ground was covered in sand and also various dull colors. The subject noted that many of the larger crystals were moving slowly and appeared to be alive. It also saw smaller creatures which scuttled around rapidly and seemed to be composed of crystal. The subject spent some time searching for water, which it found. It noted that there seemed to be considerably more of the smaller crystalline animals near the water. Shortly before the subject returned, it was attacked by one of the small creatures. The subject described both the larger and the smaller creatures as both looking and behaving similarly to crustaceans. Request: food and water that doesn't taste like sand. Granted. 7XJ HG577B. Retrieval. Subject appeared in its quarters, highly agitated. D3762 and the handcuffs binding the two together were reported missing.
D3762? Wait, it's a shed? That can't be right. This says it's like a shed that takes...
Subject before the shift was handcuffed to D3762, a convicted serial killer. Subject was instructed to terminate D3762 if either of them were placed in mortal danger. 507 shifted to a dimension where a second ice age was occurring on Earth. Immediately after landing, D3762 and the subject were captured by agents of a post-apocalyptic SCP Foundation. The former was immediately recognized as D-Class and was swiftly terminated by an individual claiming to be Agent 507 was placed in a cell in the lower levels of a facility called Site. Subject recalls that from the interrogation, the agents believed that it was a junior researcher attempting to help D3762 escape from the Foundation. During the interrogation, the subject shifted back into our dimension. Request: replacement gear. Granted. T34 DE204F. Retrieval. Subject was found in Sector, a highly restricted area. Subject was swiftly removed. Subject shifted to a dimension with a world covered in water. Subject then equipped its scuba gear and decided to see what was below the water. Subject descended for approximately 3 minutes and believed it had traveled 50 meters down before seeing the ocean floor. The floor was covered with abandoned buildings and rubble, corroded and covered with aqueous plant life. Several skeletons could be seen. Subject had searched the underwater city for 3 minutes when the subject spotted 3 black fish-like creatures moving towards it at an estimated speed of 10 meters per second. Subject drew his knife and firearm before shifting back into our dimension. Request: a pair of waterproof binoculars.
Bro,
Approved.
he was ready, bro. I'm about to let loose on these homies.
A60 D9975Q. Retrieval. Subject returned to the site wearing an elaborate costume made of silks, wool, and several unidentified mammals.
Nice.
Subject appeared in an empty alleyway of a futuristic city inhabited by a large variety of unknown humanoid entities. When subject encountered said entities, they appeared startled at its presence and began vocalizing loudly and seemed to become agitated. Eventually, the equivalent of the local authorities took the subject into custody and were able to communicate with it. When questioned about how he arrived there, subject stated it had amnesia and could not recall the last several years.
Jesus.
Subject then questioned the origin of the various beings and the reason for their presence on Earth. Said authorities explained to the subject that after Earth had suffered a CK-class end-of-the-world scenario, based on the description given, it is hypothesized that the event was caused by a CP.
Okay.
The Earth, left with a greatly reduced human population, was subsequently colonized by various extraterrestrial races. The few remaining humans on the planet mostly inhabited isolated areas away from the alien cities. These authorities then offered to take the subject to the nearest of these locations, but subject refused, insisting that it stay among the extraterrestrials. It appears the subject's status as one of the few remaining humans comfortable with the presence of the aliens, combined with a large number of facts fabricated about life on Earth prior to the CK-class scenario, allowed the subject to gain a high social profile as part of the alien society, becoming something of a celebrity during the 2 weeks it spent in shift. Request: a camera to better record and document events and sites experienced during the shifts.
See, that's
Approved.
a better way to put it. Just talking about it's breathtaking and unbelievable. They was like, nah. But you're like, bro, I could do paperwork with this shit. They were like, I see that. I love paperwork. I love paperwork.
Z73 3DD 89E. Retrieval. Subject was found in the basement of a house. Subject arrived in an airship of some sort, flying across what appeared to be a mountainous region. Subject reported meeting several humanoids it described as dwarfs and elves, similar to those found in typical high fantasy literature. These beings were supposedly mercenaries investigating an anomaly in their world, described as a dragon having fallen from the sky. Subject requested to join them in their mission, getting excited to partake in an apparently fantastical adventure. After landing at the site of the mission, subject was reluctantly convinced to stay on the airship, as the mission would likely be dangerous. Eventually getting impatient, subject investigated the cave in which the supposed dragon hid on its own, managing to take a picture of a massive reptilian creature with metallic scales and wings with its camera just as it shifted back. The picture is described by Foundation staff as sick as... Subject repeatedly affirmed that a child wearing a large pointed hat appeared just before the shift and grabbed its leg. Request: a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition player's handbook.
What is with the, like the leprechaun, I guess, that would have shifted back with him, right? Like, that's gotta be what that is.
CZE 582 7DG. Retrieval uneventful. Subject appeared in the bedroom of a cute suburban-looking house and was greeted by several people of varying age and race. They welcomed him to their home and showed him around the building. Subject noted an abundance of windows in the building. Upon looking outside, noticed that the house was encased in a large glass dome and was being viewed by several cameras. The residents explained that they were part of a zoo-like enclosure. Subject was not distressed, as he knew he would eventually return to the Foundation. Subject spent the next several days meeting the residents and relaxing while waiting to return. Request: none.
So he's just, I'm dead to it, dog. I was chilling.
DRK 038 891. Retrieval. SCP-507 was found in Dr. King's office. Subject appeared in what seemed to be an endless forest of apple trees. It was inhabited by a race of humanoids, all of whom appeared identical to Dr. King. The entity seemed to recognize SCP-507 and gave him a message to pass on to Dr. King. "Come home, lost child. We have sent you the signs countless times, yet you still do not come. Do you not remember the holy orchard of your birth? The wind through the trees? The crisp delight of her holy fruit? Please come home. We miss you." Request: to pass message on to Dr. King. Denied for the safety of SCP-507. SCP-LD-9-431. Retrieval uneventful. Subject appeared in a highly furnished version of its own containment chamber. After leaving the chamber, it is discovered that the facility was inverted from the main reality in the sense that all of the offices were replaced with containment chambers and vice versa. Further inquiry revealed that Foundation staff were being contained due to their ability to create dangerous experiments. The primary containment staff consisted of more docile versions of the baseline reality's humanoids in containment. Notably, less hostility did not make their lack of containment any safer, causing the facility to be filled with biological, mimetic, and other hazards. It is unknown how a K-class scenario has not occurred, despite the apparent lack of containment. D-class and non-research staff were unchanged. Request: heightened psychological evaluations on staff. I swear you guys are telling us something about 507. It didn't bring anything dangerous back somehow and never does. Not to mention, it wasn't a mental institution and aspires to be a researcher. Agent McDaniels.
Okay, that's true.
Addendum 507-3B00. Due to a particularly trying encounter, several documents in the archives have been altered, corrupted, or technically never existed. Document 507-3B appears to have been affected by this, and is currently being rebuilt using backup files, references, and respectively. Subject matter may occasionally increase, decrease, or undergo modifications in light of this. Doctor. Those with Level 2 507 security clearance should also see Interview 507G for evidence of a particularly noteworthy shift.
So they're basically saying like all this stuff we just went through could possibly be wrong? Is that what just happened here at the end? Because that does not make me happy.
And this is Interview 507G. Interviewed SCP-507 and SCP-507. Interviewer Dr. Forward. During a daily signal check for SCP-507, 2 independent verifications were returned. The following investigation led to the discovery of identical SCP-507 duplicates in its assigned quarters. Both apparently made their way to the room by themselves, and had spent less than half an hour conversing with each other upon meeting. The following interview took place between them and the first informed employee to reach their location. Playing log now.
Hey Doug, welcome to the party. I'm afraid you're going to have to explain this to me. There's apparently one more version of me with this problem. Should have seen this coming, honestly. There are so many ways an alternate reality could differ without affecting my personal life, you know? So, which one of you is the visitor? Is something wrong? We've actually been talking about this for a bit. Now, you guys have been real nice to us. More than we deserve, really. But we also know that this could be a rather enticing opportunity for your research department. It'd probably be best if you didn't know which one of us was temporary, expendable. I don't know what kind of stories you two have been sharing, but our job is to secure and protect the likes of you. Perhaps this other reality has a less benign code of conduct. Perhaps I can shoot fireballs from my mouth. We don't mean to be hurtful, but this place isn't the best source of human
They call you
compassion.
it. dog.
I'm sure that there's at least one person on staff who would love breaking me open in an attempt to find out how all this freaky stuff works. If it wasn't for the fact that you couldn't keep studying me after.
So do you have to put it like that? I have enough things that keep me awake at night.
Good God, I know. Once there was this guy with a huge-ass smile.
I met him too.
Nearly soiled myself.
I wish I was that lucky.
You know, this could be interpreted as a security breach.
Who's the doppelganger gonna report to? Alternate SCP? I'm fairly sure that there's a better chance of a meteor striking this place than successful cross-dimensional sabotage.
Facts. Also, it's definitely B who's the other one, because the other guys already told them about the smiling man, right? So, you know.
I've actually came across at least 3 dimensions where something fell from.
You're not helping.
I really do.
Anyway,
Well, now that our visitor is left, I have a question. Alright? Did you two figure out the difference between your realities? Actually, I think I did. In his world, Abraham Lincoln was killed while sleeping by his vice president, instead of by General Lee. In this reality, Booth assassinated Lincoln. Oh, bugger.
Closing statement.
Nice.